Tim Conley and the Minnesota Timberwolves made a bold move, bringing LaMelo Ball over to join Anthony Edwards. We're going to look at it from all angles, the good, the bad, the ugly. What does it mean for that team? What does it mean for Charlotte? And, of course, we're also going to talk about Isaiah Joe, the Knicks, and a whole lot more on today's All-NBA show. What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA show powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/AllCity. I'm your host, Adam Mares. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Tim Legler, a man enjoying a little bit of a break finally after a long season. How you doing, Legs?
What's up, man? Good. Doing good. It just was watching my son at his first little baseball camp this morning. So it was great, man.
Oh, wow.
It was cool.
Good. He's so little. Like, it's got to be T-ball right now. They're just learning, like, the basics.
Yeah, it's T-ball, and it's they're all over the place is what it is. I mean, it's almost like it's like an asylum out there is what it looks like, trying to track down the patients. Like, he had a great time. I was happy. He stuck with it all week because it's hot out. It's standing around a lot at baseball, you know what I mean? But he hung in there, man. He's finishing up as we speak. My wife's up there picking him up. So
I love it, man. Little kid sports are great. My daughter still plays softball. The other day, one of them made a stretch catch from third base.
Oh,
like,
man,
first
it's
time.
the best when that starts happening. Yeah.
I was just like, there you go. You know, usually they'll just run after the ball and catch as you stretched, caught it, out. I was going crazy, man. On today's show, it's gonna be a short show today. We're just gonna run through the big moves, and the biggest move that happened here over the last handful of days is that the Minnesota Timberwolves acquired LaMelo Ball, sent Naz Reid, and a bunch of picks and pick swaps over to Charlotte. But rather than break down like the salary cap angle of this, I'm so intrigued about the on-court fit here. I've been going back and forth about what I think about LaMelo Ball in Minnesota. Obviously changes their identity. I started skeptical. Over the last few days, I'm moving towards very intrigued for this. What is your initial reaction to LaMelo Ball being there, Legs?
Yeah, I didn't immediately, go down that rabbit hole of, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster. Like I've heard a lot of people kind of react that way. I don't necessarily believe that. Maybe they end up being right. We'll find out over time. But I think that, look, that team did not feel like they were continuing to progress.
Yeah.
This was a team that went to 2 conference finals in a row. And last year they dealt with some injuries, and they had some, injuries even in the postseason that sort of derailed everything. But it felt like there needed to be something fresh about it that had to take place. And this is it. Now, so you no longer have Julius Randle, who's their second best offensive player. And whether you like his game or not like his game, he was a guy that was a high usage rate for that team. He was the second most important offensive player on the team. He's not there anymore. Naz Reid's not there anymore. Former 6th man of the year. One of the most versatile front court guys we have at the power forward center position in the league. Plays both ends of the floor, can really shoot it. Really valuable player for them. He's not there anymore either. So you look at this situation now and you go, what's it going to look like? So you got the Sunmu, who had this incredible run with them after he got there from Chicago, and then, of course, what he did in the postseason. And now you got him paired with Anthony Edwards and then LaMelo Ball. So there's going to be a lot of electricity. There's a lot of juice. Now there's also, you're going to get questionable decision-making. You're going to get personality types.
Yes.
That is, I think, is what most people are wondering about.
Agreed.
Personality types and the differences and the conflict potentially between Anthony Edwards and LaMelo Ball. I can't answer that. We've got to let that see how that plays out over time. There's going to be a style about their play, and there's going to be an element to this that's going to make Anthony Edwards' life easier. That I do believe. And I think that's really important for Timberwolves fans to look at. Because there's going to be some stuff you're going to live with LaMelo Ball, man. And we talked about it last year, but like that team found their stride, and there was something about him. I mean, he's so entertaining to watch. But yeah, if you're a fan of the team, it can be frustrating some nights. But there's no denying what this guy can do with the basketball and the way he can move it, the pace he plays with. He can carry you offensively some nights if he gets hot. He can certainly spread it around with his passing. Yeah. So he's going to make, I think, Anthony Edwards' job a lot easier than it's been in the past. And I think from that standpoint, it's something Minnesota Timberwolves fans should be open to and embrace. And let's see. You're going to be running out there 3-guard lineups, I think, most of the time now. It's going to be different. Maybe slide Jaylen over to the 4 spot and play with Gobert. I think that's probably the best team you're going to put out there. I'm very intrigued to see what this does ultimately to affect Anthony Edwards. Because I think there's some things about it that are going to make it a lot better for him, make him fresher. He's not going to have to create as much offense as an initiator to start a possession. This is a lot of that could be on LaMelo Ball's plate now and make Anthony Edwards more of a finisher. And I think that's going to be a better role.
So I think you spoke to the two angles of this that are interesting. And the first one, yes, it's the locker room personality. You were talking about interpersonal dynamics. And of course, we have to let those play out. Who knows? People pretend they know how those things will go. Nobody knows. We'll see how that plays out. But I think the personality of the team is important here because this has been a team that's had the personality of toughness, of defense, physicality. You know, LaMelo doesn't quite fit that. So how much of your old personality is retained? You still have Jaden McDaniels and Rudy Gobert, Anthony Edwards. Those are a lot of the guys that brought that physicality. So I think that you wonder how much of the personality changes. But then you talk about stylistically. And yes, he makes Anthony Edwards' life easier, but he also changes his role. Because Anthony Edwards has been the fulcrum of their offense. You know, so much goes through him. There's oftentimes he's acting as a de facto point guard because he's drawing traps and having to find the ball or finding the open guy and create something out of it. And LaMelo comes and alleviates that. But he also takes the ball out of his hands a lot. And LaMelo's a phenomenal player. I think it will work in a great way. But I think that still is an adjustment, a huge adjustment when you think about what Anthony Edwards has been to the Timberwolves since his arrival, and now saying we're going to give a lot of that role to somebody else so you can accentuate the best parts of your role. As much as that sounds good, it is also an adjustment, and that's the part I'm curious. What is the balance? How much of this does this feel like Anthony Edwards' team versus LaMelo Ball's team? And I don't know why my camera is having such a hard time this morning. But go on, the personality part of this, like Anthony Edwards, you know, he's going to have a different role now on his team.
Yeah, he is. And I think to not have, and look, he's got to be willing to, I guess, give up some of the control of the playmaking initiation because, you know, it's particularly when they got deeper into the playoffs or they got into big situations, it felt like it was all on his shoulders. Like he's got to go create all of this offense or that handful of possessions, whatever, when they're going to give the ball to Randall, let him play. And that was going to be sometimes tough to watch in the postseason. I think Anthony Edwards now has got to be willing to accept it. And if you can just get off the ball and run a little bit or play off the ball and get it the second half of the possession, it's going to help him ultimately. I think it's going to help him stay fresher. It's going to help him stay healthier. And I think it's just LaMelo Ball is a very dynamic player. You know, for people maybe in Minnesota that don't know or watching the Hornets or aren't familiar or think about the Ball name and think it's got a negative connotation or whatever. This guy can do a lot of stuff on the court. Like I said, he can have nights where, look, he's going to have nights where he doesn't shoot well and he continues to shoot the three and it's going to drive you nuts. I mean, I called a game last year, I think where he was 0 for 10.
We talked about it, I think, on this show.
Kept going, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to happen. But, man, value him for what he does well and the pace he can play with. His passing, his flair, very entertaining, but he can also get a 15-point quarter, man. Like and he can do it easily because he can shoot the ball from deep and he doesn't need a lot of time to get it off. And he's got an unorthodox release, but it goes in. He's a good finisher. He's going to turn the ball over more than you like, and he's going to take 4 or 5 questionable shots a night where you're just kind of like, man, do we need that one right there? But there's going to be a lot of nights when it's clicking. He's going to be entertaining, and he is going to make your offense hum. There's a reason that team was 28-10 to finish the year in Charlotte. 28-10. Now, look, Knipple had a great rookie year. Bridges, Brandon Miller, like they got a nice nucleus. Diabate was a perfect guy for pick and rolling in the middle. None of that works without what LaMelo Ball did and the pace he created for that team. He created the pace. He created all of the three-point shooting. Right? Because they were a prolific three-point shooting team last year. They could shoot you out of the building. And they went on that stretch, man, over the last 2 months of the season. They were almost unguardable. They won their first player in the game. Now, it didn't end well. They got smoked by Orlando. Orlando got into them in a big way physically, and they mauled them in that game and took them off their completely out of their rhythm. But that you can't deny 29-11 in their last 40 games, including the play-in, and a lot of that created by LaMelo Ball. He's going to create a lot of the same stuff in Minnesota.
Well, there's a lot of ways to create problems for a team. One of them is physicality and just size, and that's what Orlando was able to do to Charlotte, and it became the only thing that mattered, you know, in that play-in game. And sometimes that's how you get it done. But another thing we learned from this playoffs is how valuable it is to have multiple initiators, especially on ball. You can just create, get past your guy. And let's look at Minnesota right now. Anthony Edwards, elite at that. One of the toughest covers one-on-one in the NBA. LaMelo Ball, elite at that. Very tough cover and can set the table. Ayo Dosunmu, for a third guy, very tough to keep in front of you just with his quickness, his downhill speed. And then Jaden McDaniels as your fourth guy, if he's the fourth creator for you on the floor, I mean, he is underrated in his ability to do some stuff with the ball, especially when you talk about he's the fourth guy there. You add in Rudy Gobert still there, by the way, as his whole career underappreciated perhaps in how much rim pressure he puts on and with just his rolling and offensive rebounding. And to me, I look at this and say, what made Charlotte so good in that 38-game sample you just referenced or whatever the number was, what made them so good was their offense was unbelievable. I think the offensive group LaMelo is going to be surrounded with now is a lot better. So I look at them now and say, I think they're going to be a really elite offensive team and in some ways playoff proof offensively because of how many creators they have.
I agree with that. And I think here's one of the keys here. You don't make this move. You're basically looking at going into the season and Dosunmu is your starting point guard. I mean, that's where you're going because DiVincenzo's out probably for the year. Unless he has some sort of a Jason Tatum recovery and he comes back at some point late in the season, which I guess is possible nowadays. But regardless, you can't count on having him. So you're looking at going into the year with Dosunmu. Now you have another elite high-usage ball handler. So now you can, if you want to play all three at the start, which I think is very possible, and you might consider it, there you go. Because I don't think you give Dosunmu that kind of money and think he's going to come off the bench. So
right.
You say you go with all three, but now you can stagger those guys in and out. So you've always got one on the court at all times. And look, Mike Conley, as much as I love him throughout his career, like Mike Conley, and it's at the very end. You now have another dude that you can stagger in and out. So you always are going to have one of these elite level ball handlers on the floor and a guy that could be your lead guard and at times play all three together. So, look, I'm not going to sit here and say this makes all the difference for the Timberwolves and go ahead, man. They're put them in contender status now. We have to see it. All I'm saying is I didn't necessarily agree with a lot of the initial immediate negative reaction to this from the part of Minnesota at all. Look at what they've been. Look at what they were. Are they going in the right direction? If they don't decide to freshen this up, and I think they freshened it up.
Yeah.
Now it's got to work, man. It's got to work. And those guys have to click. There's got to be a mutual respect factor there, and Chris Finch has to connect with the LaMelo Ball, all that stuff. But to say that this guy it can't work, I think is selling LaMelo Ball a little bit short, and just his talent and his impact to other players because of the pace he creates with his passing and his up the floor push. He can flat out get teams back on their heels, and it makes the game easier for guys around him.
Well, I think they're just a very different team now. And that's part of anytime something changes, you say, okay, I think they're going to be really good here, but what left? Did they lose physicality? Did they lose size? So they're going to count on some of their young guys now stepping up to battle some of the bigs in the Western Conference, which is a big deal if you have enough bigs to go to match up with the Western Conference. So it'll be a question, but I'm with you. I've just moved more towards that offense is going to be really tough to cover, and it should be really exciting. And then LaMelo in the playoffs, we're just going to have to see that. He hasn't had great, when the games have mattered, he hasn't been great, but it's a really small sample size. Now you're on a team that is only judged by how you perform in the playoffs. Nobody's going to judge the Wolves by the regular season. Can you get over the hump and into the finals will be the question, and we'll just have to wait. I mean,
and sorry, one more final point on this. The other thing, let's not put all of this on LaMelo Ball. There's other things that have to happen, Adam, for this team. And I think I look at Terrence Shannon Jr.
Yeah,
that was a disappointing year overall. I know he had the injury, but it was a disappointing conclusion to the year. He has to develop. It's critical that he develops. He was in line to take over that spot from Nickeil Alexander-Walker. He has not done it. That's critical for them now. And some of these young guys might have to play. They just drafted Behringer, Isaiah Evans, who was regarded as one of the best pure shooters in the draft, slipped. A lot of people had him as a late first-round pick. He goes to the second round. Those guys might need to play this year as 19-year-olds and give them something. And, of course, we'll see what happens with DiVincenzo. But just looking at, that starting lineup of Bell, Edwards, Dosunmu, McDaniels, and Gobert, that could be a pretty damn good offense.
Yeah.
And we'll see where it goes from there. And of course, the whole other side of it is from Charlotte's standpoint.
Yep.
Now we just talked about all these great things about LaMelo Ball, but in some ways, can this be something that works better for Charlotte? What do you think?
I think that this is more just a shift in directions for them. I'm curious to see what they do from here. You know, they have a lot of cap space now. They have a move to make if they want to go that direction. Do they want to continue to slow play it? To me, you have a giant void now. You had an engine to your offense that was LaMelo Ball. Does the offense work the same? Almost certainly not. So what do they do there? I mean, to me, it's an incomplete. I don't know what to make of Charlotte yet because I feel like they still have to complete their roster. I'll know more in a week's time. Do you have a different perspective than that?
I do. It's weird because people need to understand. So I get LaMelo Ball's warts. So I'm not just this advocate for LaMelo Ball. Like there's nothing there that kind of can drive you crazy. I get it, but I also see the value that he brings. But at the same time, I look at this group and the supporting cast that they had around him. Can they go in another direction at point? Can it be Kobe White? Kobe White's a pretty damn good player in this league. So you got that now at point. What does that look like? It won't be quite the same pace. He can play fast, but he's more of a guy that's going to score more than get you involved. So the ball's going to be a little bit different. I think they're going to put a little more responsibility in Con Knippel's hands this year as an initiator. And I think he's a guy that can develop in that way. Of course, you still have Brandon Miller, you still have Miles Bridges, and then some of the guys they drafted, Hannes Stambach. He's a guy that's really important in the middle. Like he led the nation in rebounding. This is a guy, and they need that. Diabate, I love his role. He's a little bit undersized. This is a guy, Steinbach, that can get in there, and you can't root him out. He can secure defensive rebounds. They still have Kalkbrenner, so that's got to work out for them. They drafted Christian Anderson, who is one of the best pure playmakers in the draft of this guard class. There was a lot of guards picked, a lot of hype around these guards. Almost all of them are combos. They're guys that really score first and can play make a little bit and can run ball screen looking for themselves mostly. Christian Anderson makes you better. He looks at the game differently. He's a guy that I think people are going to love because he's out there first and foremost to make the game easier for you, kind of similar to LaMelo Ball. He doesn't have the size or the flair or any of that or probably the deep shooting range right now, but he does have the instincts for a natural point guard. Now, these guys are young. They're rookies. Who knows how much they can contribute. But then Naz Reid, that's a big pickup. That is a big pickup, man.
How's he going to be there?
This is a very accomplished player, man. And he can be your starter if you want him to be. You can play two bigs because of his versatility as a shooter and a guy that can get on the floor. So this is going to be interesting for them. It's a different look for sure because you kind of picture them when you picture the Hornets last year. The first guy that pops in your head is LaMelo Ball.
Yeah.
Just because of the way he plays, it's like wow, man, it's got like a Pistol Pete type mentality out there. It's fun. And they got on a roll, and he was the engine of it. You're right. Now they go in a different direction, but I still think it can work.
Well, offensive rebounding was also a huge piece for them. I mean, they grabbed every offensive board, and they did it by spreading you out. Naz Reid helps that. You can play, if you do play them both together, Diabate crashing the boards, but then you have to have a big body out on Naz Reid. And then I'm just curious if Naz Reid expands his game at all out there. Are they making this move based on the thought that they think, if he gets elevated, he has a little bit of, handle, he could put the ball on the floor. Do they ramp that up and explore what the limit is there? I think Naz Reid will be interesting to watch next year for that reason. So it's an interesting trade, but I just look at Minnesota. Last thing before we take a break, but what does Minnesota have to do for this to be a win? Because here's the other part of it. They have to win it all. This is a win it all move. You make the conference finals twice, conference semis this year. You've already made the deep playoff run. Now, the only thing you have to do now is win the championship. And so I feel like that's how this will be graded. Do you think they have a better shot now at getting that done?
I do think I like this team better. But it's got to play out, man. It's got to play out. I would like it a lot more if they had DiVincenzo still. But not having him most of the years is a big loss. I want to see how they replace the Naz Reid minutes. That's going to be an interesting one. I think ultimately it could be a more high-octane, more viable offense. But look, this was a team that in the postseason, they got things done because of their physicality, their defense, and they had the size and strength to play that kind of basketball that you see in the postseason. We haven't seen that out of LaMelo Ball. So who knows what that's going to look like for him. You saw the one play-in game last year against Orlando that ended their season, and it was a very physical game, and he did not respond well to that. Nope. So there are definitely some question marks, but the offense, I think, has got this refresh about it that might make it a better regular season option every night for them to go win games. Playoffs could be another story, but we'll see, man. That's next April. We'll see what they look like at that time, because there could be more moves that take place during the season or even this summer with what they might do.
All right, well, let's take a break. On the other side, we're going to do some very quick hitters on some of the other moves, including Isaiah Joe going to Detroit, and a move that Legs texted this morning was huge. We'll get to that on the other side. Season is underway, and on Kalshi you can trade every single player movement, which I think is a really cool thing you can do here. Right now, Jaylen Brown is trading at just 35% to stay with Boston. I feel like this is inevitable. We're going to talk about it on the other side, but that's down to 35%. Kalshi has no idea, though, where he's going. New Orleans, Portland, both 10%. Charlotte, 6%. Cleveland, 4%. Houston, 6%. Atlanta, 6%. Nobody knows where he's going. I feel confident that he is leaving Boston. On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there is no house. And as the probabilities change, you can buy in and out of your position. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use the code ALLNBA to get $10 when you trade 10. KALSHI, Kalshi, trade on anything. 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory. I also want to tell you guys about Spotify. What kind of dreams did you have when you were a kid? What did you want to be when you grew up? How about now? Are you thinking about your own business or side hustle? Summertime is the time to get started on a side hustle. Even for me, little projects, written projects I always put to the side, pick up them in the summer. Shopify is the e-commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S. Shopify even powers the ALLCITY merch store. Shopify has you covered with website creation, product descriptions, email and social media marketing, and more. And they have AI tools designed to help you maximize sales. So if you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/allcity. That's shopify.com/allcity. All right, back here, final segment of the All NBA show. Short show today, me and Tim Legler. We'll be back over the weekend with Mark Stein, so stay tuned for that. But let's do some quick hitters here. Isaiah Joe is departing Oklahoma City and heading up to Motor City. He is going to Detroit, and it just cost 2 second-rounders. They added some shooting. You called this huge, Legs. I would say this is a nice pickup, but huge. Tell me why.
Huge, man. Well, because you're talking about a 60-win team that no one took as serious as you needed to because of lack of shooting. I mean, this is a team that defensively can lock you up. They've got a big star guard that can answer the call in the fourth quarter. They had their offense even dried up in the postseason because even Jalen Duren, who they were counting on to give them 15 to 20 or 20 or more than 20 every night, a lot of that in the paint, completely went away because of the way teams were defending them by not guarding their shooters and clogging up the lane. So it completely derailed Jalen Duren's postseason to the point where this is a guy that is a third team all league player, and you're looking at him in the postseason going, man, what are they going to do? Are they going to keep Jalen Duren? Do they have to move Jalen Duren after one postseason because he was that ineffective offensively? And the reason, because the teams that played them took an elite defender and they basically just camped out on the edge of the lane. And they stayed in his lap on the short roll, which is where he killed people all year. It was unavailable to him. He's not a back-to-the-basket post player, so that wasn't going to also, let me just go down here and operate. He's not a shooter, so he has to get it a certain way. And he's really good all year on those rolls. And Cade Cunningham in the two-man game. Why teams didn't play him way more in the regular season? I don't know. Maybe because regular season you got 1 day to prepare for a team, and you're not that locked in on them. But you get to the playoffs, you are locked in on how do we take away something from this team that's important? And that's what they did to the Pistons. And the only reason it worked, because they only had one shooter on the floor, and it was Duncan Robinson, who was getting face guarded, by the way. So they need another big-time shooter, and that's what Isaiah Joe is. And by the way, you don't have to sacrifice defense with Isaiah Joe. He can pressure the ball. He fights over screens. He's a really good, above average defensive player in this league. who shoots 40% from the three-point line and can be a high-volume shot taker. He's 20-plus minutes a game on a team that won a championship. So this is a guy that's incredibly valuable. And if you put him out there with Duncan Robinson at the same time, now you've got decisions to make, and you're not going to get away with the same coverage that you saw this year on Jalen Duren. That's why I think this is huge. The one thing they didn't have enough of was shooting. They went out and they drafted a Corey, the point guard, Stanford, who's one of the quickest guys in the draft and a legitimate ball handler now for Cade Cunningham. They didn't have that either, really. Danish Jenkins was fine, but they wanted to upgrade that. I think they did eventually with a Corey. They needed shooting, and they went out and they found that too. And they didn't give up much. Second-round picks, you know how I feel about second-round picks. Okay? I got 3 of them in my ashtray in my car. I don't care about second-round picks. You know it. We'll fight about it. Just because your boy was a second-round pick.
Hey, man.
Yeah, everybody is not Jokic.
3-time MVP.
All right? I don't care. Everybody's not Jokic. Yeah. So, anyway, that's not to giving up a lot for a guy that's a champion that can play both ends of the floor, that can eat up 20-plus minutes, and is an elite shooter. I think it's a great pickup for the Pistons.
Well, one other rumor that's swirling around right now is that, Jalen Duren trying to negotiate an extension. You don't want to overpay it based on the playoffs that he just had. Jaylen Brown's over there in Boston. He's in every trade rumor right now. Can he even go back to Boston based on how publicly he has been in all these rumors? And one rumor even has those players being swapped, a sign and trade for Jalen Duren and Jaylen Brown. You could talk about that, or you could just talk about the general Jaylen Brown situation of it just feels inevitable to me now that Boston has to move on based on how aggressively it seems they've been pursuing options outside of him.
I totally agree with that, and you're hearing a lot about that. If he feels like the number's not going to be right, then is there going to be potentially a sign and trade done with Jalen Duren? And Boston sitting there, and Jaylen Brown, you're wondering what's going to happen with him. No one has the answer to that. He hasn't really said much about it.
Would that
the organization? I think it would make sense for Boston, yes, because the what I would be concerned about if I was looking at Jalen Duren as another team that was really interested in him prior to the playoffs, was that was dramatic. You don't see that kind of a drop-off offensively out of guys that are all league players, typically. Okay, so that would be a concern, except for what I just said. Shooting on the floor, which Boston always has a lot of, that is what opens up the lane for a guy like Duren. And now his size and his power and his hands on catching on the rolls and the way teams have to close out to the shooting, and there's all that room down there for him, I think it'd be much harder to figure out a way to game plan for him and take that away. And they don't really have that element. Like the guys that play in the middle for them, Kata's very limited. He's basically a offensive rebounder and a little bit of a rim runner. That's it. And then the other guys they've had there last year, look at Vucevic, they had Garza. These guys are basically spending the whole game at the three-point line. So this is a different element for Boston. So that would be something that would be very intriguing for me if they think they've got to move on from Jaylen Brown because it's just too deep now. What's going on, and you're not going to recover from it. And then if you're Detroit, you're looking at what happened during the postseason, and that's got you a little bit nervous going into the year with him because you're counting on being a contender, and you can't contend if a guy drops off like that. Maybe that makes sense for both teams.
It'd be wild to see that one happening. I mean, Jaylen, that would be a completely different team. I feel like right now Detroit is adding shooting to who they already are. You lost Beef Stew, who I think is a kind of an underrated loss, but still, you add shooting. We know who we are. It's Cade's team, pick and roll. And now you hit some open shooters. If you brought Jaylen Brown in and lost Duren, you're going to replace him with some kind of rim roller who's not necessarily dynamic or anything, but just a rim roller. But you have a whole new identity around Jaylen Brown now and Cade Cunningham. So that's a huge swing. It'd be a huge change. But, of course, it's just a rumor at this point. Jaylen Brown, it's one of many Jaylen Brown rumors that I think are going to pick up a lot over the next 72 hours. And then, of course, Tuesday, the opening of free agency is where it's all going to go down. Hit that outro music for us, Atticus. We had to do a short show today, busy schedules and whatnot. But next week, free agency begins. I'll have Mark Stein. Maybe something big happens between now and then. Sunday night, he and I will be live. And then next week, we'll wait and see and break down all of the major trades. And there's some big names, man. Kawhi Leonard, LeBron James, who knows what he's going to do. Jaylen Brown, as we mentioned, and a whole host of teams that have big decisions to make. So make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Make sure you hit the like button. We'll see you next week, everybody.
We all silly like the mayor.